Good morning. Today, we will begin our discussion on the capability approach to development, um, which is proposed by two important philosophers, namely Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. For this morning, we will focus on the version of Amartya Sen. So let's start with getting to know who Amartya Sen is. So he is an Indian economist and philosopher, and in 1998, he won the Nobel Prize in Economics. Currently, he teaches in Harvard University as an economics professor. So you will notice that before Sen became a philosopher, he was first an economist, and had worked a lot on development economics, no, for many years. And from there, he sort of became interested in philosophy and developed his own philosophy, particularly in the discourse on social justice. So the latest book that Sen has written, called "The Idea of Justice," which took off from Rawls's theory of justice, um, outlines, his own ideas about what social justice is and its relation to to development, to human development specifically. So in this photo, you can see me with Sen. Um, I think when I was still studying in Europe then in 2010, when there was a symposium, no, on that publication, the idea of justice, of Sen, and he was invited as the main speaker. So um, let's now go to the work of Amartya Sen. In his early work, the focus of Sen was as an economist, development economist, was really on famine and poverty. So his earlier study focused on how famines and poverty occur, which was actually a precursor, for his works on capabilities later on. And what does he say about poverty? He says that poverty is obvious. No? It's obvious because we can see families, individuals, suffering, deprived of material resources needed for their daily lives. No? So this includes lack of housing, lack of access to education, to medicine. So basically, those things that are have been deprived, from individuals. If you remember roles, um, material resources that they need to be able to live a decent life. But according to Sen, the occurrence of poverty and famines, well obvious, they're not also it's not also obvious. And so he said that famines occur not simply due to declining and production of supply, food production and supply. So if you think about it, no, normally what catches our attention when you talk about famine is that there is a decrease, no, of food production and supply, so that people do not have access to food, no, and they go hungry. So in other words, it seems like at first sight the main cause of famines are, let's say, the declining food production and supply, maybe due to environmental reasons, mainly due to environmental reasons like drought, flooding, among other things. However, Sen would say that famines occur, no, because not only because of declining production and supply, but also because individuals, lose their entitlements and purchasing power to acquire and access food. No, so people cannot access food, cannot buy the food that they need because of being deprived of entitlements. No, and what are the factors? No, what are those things that somehow prevent individuals from exercising, no, enjoying their entitlements, no, as well as the purchasing power to be able to acquire and access food, no? he would Sen would refer to various arrangements, no, economic, social, and political, that can directly or indirectly influence people's capacities or abilities to acquire food and to achieve health and nourishment. So, what are these examples of political arrangements? Well, it's very clear. For instance, when there is war, when there's conflict going on, people have to are displaced, no, can be displaced, rather can be displaced, and therefore, they would have difficulty accessing food supply, no, or you have economic and social arrangements that only benefit, no, the rich, no, at the expense of the poor. And so that really here we're talking about, for instance, social and economic inequalities, no, so in terms of the levels of income that individuals have would also determine, no, their access, no, how far the extent of their access to sufficient food, to sufficient health and nourishment. So these are different factors, no, that according to Sen, directly or indirectly affect, no, people's capacities or access to food, health, and nourishment, which at first glance are not very obvious, no, because what seems to be so obvious when we have poverty and famine, we refer this to declining food production, but we don't take into account the very important but not so obvious factors, and this includes, as I've said, the economic, social, and political arrangements. So I think this also includes even, no, the culture of corruption and all the other um, political and, unethical arrangements that are happening within a particular society. So Sen would further argue that to be able to prevent, no, entitlement failures, to be able to prevent you know people from being denied, no, of this entitlement to food, to health, and nourishment, this requires what he would call social safety nets, no, like unemployment insurance, anti-poverty programs. So we can think about, the things that we discussed earlier about um, anti-poverty measures, no, the distributive schemes, no, that are being implemented by different societies to be able to address the needs of the poorest of the poor. So this Susen would say that the poor are actually, we can say, to some extent, na if life were only a matter of competition, were are the losers. And according to Sen, government states now have the responsibility to take care of these individuals, no, um who have lost, no, in this battle to some extent. So there has to be social safety nets, no, these are programs, no, these are schemes that would address, no, the needs of those who did not make it, no. So like someone who lost job, there has to be an unemployment insurance or employment subsidies, if you remember, no, or scholarships for for kids that are talented, but they come from poor families. So, and all the other anti-poverty programs in a particular society. So these are schemes, according to Sen, that would in some sense prevent, no, individuals from entitlement failures, no. So, well, of course, these are temporary solutions, no. These are temporary solutions. These are not, as I've said, and even Rawls would recognize this as the ultimate solutions to the problems of, let's say, famine and poverty, because in the end, this requires more, no, action. This requires um, a lot of ingenuities and resources as well to be able to so let's say lift, no, poor people from their conditions of poverty. Now let me go to the second part. Sen criticizing the resources approach, no. So as an economist, Sen knows, no, that there is something wrong, no, with you know development initiatives, no, with development programs that focus only on the distribution of resources. And I think he was referring here to the Roshan approach, no, where if it was very clear, no, during our discussion on Roshan theory of justice that the primary focus of addressing poverty, of social justice issues, is simply to redistribute material resources. And for Sen, no, the focus on the resources approach, no, on resources distribution, is is I would say inadequate, no, particularly when we try to address that poverty issues. Okay, so Sen would say that social justice and development is not so much about how many goods individuals possess as it is about what individuals can do with the resources, no. So I think I discussed this also before, that if you remember in the index of primary goods that rules provided, no, as a basis for the distribution, no, so wealth, income, powers and opportunities, and even the social basis of self-respect, what seems to be the focus there is that there has to be a fair access of no, for individuals of these goods, no. So the task therefore of Roshan justice, no, of or Roshan development theory is to provide no equal access, fair access to these material resources. But Sen would say that there is something wrong when this seems to be the only focus, because for him it's not so much about how much people have, no, how many goods, how many resources people have, so that we would say that they have reached the level of development, they have, that there is a particular society has reached a level of fairness of or justice. Rather, he said it's about what individuals are able to do with the resources that they have. So, in other words, think about two individuals. Let's say someone who is able, who is fully able, no, and the other one is differently able. Let's say the handicapped person. Even if you give them, according to rules, rather Sen, if you give them 1 million pesos, these two individuals, no, who have found themselves in each in different contexts, would not have the same or at least equal way of benefiting from the resources that they have, let's say of 1 million, no. So let's say the person who is fully able with 1 million pesos, no, he can somehow spend it, let's say, in building let's say a tennis court because he loves to play tennis, or in whatever way he can, no. But the person, no, who is differently abled, a handicap for instance, um, even if he has 1 million, he will never be able to, let's say, if he cannot walk, you know, with his own two legs, he will always be in a wheelchair, no. Or if for instance the handicapping situation of that person is that he or she is blind, and that condition of blindness is something, ano bang tawag niyan, parang terminal, something that cannot be cured. So kahit na may 1 million pesos siya, hindi pa rin the same level of enjoyment, no, that person can have compared to that person who is fully able. So these are, in other words, what Sen is trying to point out here would be, in later on I will discuss, the personal heterogeneities, which in some way, no, influence, no, the way individuals are really able to enjoy, no, what they can do with the resources that they have, no. So that's why Sense would say that I think what's more important, no, in the issue of development or social justice is not simply the amount, no, of resources that people can have, but the ability, the capability on what they are able to do with the resources. So that's why he said number two, the metric of justice should not be whether or not individuals have been able to utilize the resources in the achievement of their functionings. No, no, I think it should be the metric of justice should be whether or not no individuals have been able to utilize the resources in the achievement of their functionings like nutrition, life expectancy, health, and education. So later on we will try to discuss further, what do we mean by these functionings, but vis-a-vis the notion of capability. But for now, let's say that functionings are those different forms of marabang state of one's life, no, which are important for a normal way of living. So like nutrition, no, or health, no, or education. So Sen number three would point out different parametric variations of individuals that would influence the way individuals are able to utilize the resources, no? In the achievement of their functionings like nutrition, life expectancy, health, and education. And the first parametric variation that he points out is this personal heterogeneity. So, what do we mean by the personal heterogeneities? This refers actually to the different needs, no, of individuals by virtue of their physical characteristics. No? And what are these? Age, gender, and disability. So this is something that I mentioned already, that a person with disability could require a wheelchair, prosthesis, no? Yung parang ano yan, artificial na paa, no? Like, well, today we have the Paralympics, 'di ba, sa ongoing right now in Japan. Okay, so prosthesis and other needs, no, which are not needed by the physically normal individuals. So, as I've said, even if this person possesses the same bundle of resources or bundle of goods as do the physically normal individuals, the person with disability cannot enjoy these goods in the same extent as the latter. So that's why, when we talk about distribution of goods, when you talk about social justice and development, we have to take this into account, no? The personal heterogeneity, the personal context, no, of a particular individual. So maybe in the case of let's say individuals with disabilities, no, these persons are their concern is not only with having material resources, no, but also social acceptance, no, particularly in a society where there is parabang stigma, no, against this people, no. So this stigma, for instance, no, this need for social acceptance because of their disability, condition of disability, is not just about you know cannot just be addressed by distribution of resources by giving them more money, but much more, and that is really like recognition. So I think we can also say the same thing, no, on, let's say, the issues of women, no, or even of the LGBT communities, no, what they need is not really about more, let's say, material resources, no, to be given more wealth and income, but what they need really is about social acceptance, no. And this is something that roles, no, the resources approach to development, to social justice, does not take into account, no. So hindi ibig sabihin na pag marami ka ng pera, pag marami ka ng magmayaman ka na, you can already be accepted culturally, no. Parang kung iisipin mo, no, may mga mayayaman, no, that um individuals who were really born rich, and so they've been in that situation and that kind of life for many years. But there are also let's say families, individuals, who became wealthy, um from let's say a very poor life then, no, but because of hard work or whatever is it that they do, they were able to um acquire more wealth and therefore becomes filthy rich, no. But for some in the, let's say, among rich communities, among rich people, these people who have, let's say, even if they have no even if they are very rich, no, they can still be not accepted by this community of rich people. Remember the case before of Pacquiao, no, when I think despite the status of Manny Pacquiao, no, being a world champion in boxing and becoming very filthy rich, he was never accepted in the Manila Polo Club, no, because it was a very exclusive para bang group of ultra rich Filipinos, no, there in Manila before Pacquiao. Even if he was very rich, he was never accepted, no, in that particular group, no. So something like this, that when we talk about human development, when we talk about social justice, there are things that cannot just be addressed, no, by distribution of resources, or by having, no, fair access or more access to, or possession, no, to resources, or to material resources. So that's one. First, parametric variation of individuals, the personal heterogeneities of individuals, no, referring to their different needs, no, by virtue of physical characteristics, no, age, gender, and disability. Second, environmental diversity. So environmental diversities just refers to the different, no, climatic conditions, no, such as temperatures, ranges, rainfall, and flooding that affect a particular given place. So against roles, Sen would argue that the equal distribution of goods cannot guarantee that there will be equal enjoyment of goods between those who live in places not prone to flooding and those who live in areas prone to flooding. Well, we can bring up the issue here of climate change. No, for we know that climate change, the impact of climate change is now being felt by different countries in the world, no, whether these are rich or poor countries, no. Just recently, not yet, like last night, I don't know if you have heard the news that in New York City, there was New York, no, state, there was a lot of flooding because of the rains, no, that are brought about by Ida, the hurricane Ida, no, and as well as in New Jersey. So, or a few weeks ago, we have probably seen on TV, or on the internet, the yung Western Westphalia region of Germany that suffered so much, no, due to flash flood. No, I've been to those actually places, and it's really horrifying to see, no, these very beautiful places now becoming like the Philippines, no, being having been para bang destroyed by the flood. So if you think about it, well, while all countries in the world, no, have experienced the impact of climate change, I think richer countries are more capable of para bang recovering, no, from these tragedies, no, compared to what we have experienced, for instance, in the Philippines, no, that is which is a poor country, when we were battered by the super typhoons, no, few years ago. So there was so much death, there were so many people who died, properties destroyed, and so many things. So these different environmental conditions, no, that somehow communities or people experience would also impact the way they're able to take advantage, no, to make use of the resources that are given to them. So this very important. Or in the case of drought, no, we are also a bit fortunate here in Davao City and in the Philippines that while we had experiences of drought before, these droughts, no, the El Nino, no, phenomenon that we experienced before, were never comparable, no, to the experience of drought, for instance, in some countries in Africa, no. So these different environmental diversities, environmental conditions that people are in, okay, would also impact, no, affect the way they're able to enjoy the resources they have. So Sen says, and I quote, variation in environmental conditions, no, such as climatic circumstances, can somehow influence what a person gets out of a given level of income. No, like heating and clothing requirements of the poor in colder climates cause problems that may not be shared by equally poor people in warmer lands. So, when you live in a cold place, in a very cold country, like probably those in Russia, no, Siberia, even in European countries that are near the Arctic region, there are still poor people there, no, and their needs, no, are different, no, from those that live in warmer climates, no, in warmer lands. And so they're the even if, let's say, the same ang income, no, of an individual or family who live in these colder places, as well as, those in warmer places, when those who live in the colder places need more resources to be able to buy the clothes that they need to wear during winter time, or that they have to spend for the heating system in their houses. It would appear then that the expenses, no, because the expenses differ, no, from one context to another, no, somehow in the end would tell us that the level of income, no, that people receive, no, can somehow be impacted, no, by the environment that they are in, okay, or even the presence of infectious diseases, no, like malaria or cholera or even AIDS, no, affect the quality of life, no, of the inhabitants. So these are examples of environmental diversities. The third is social climate variations. Well, this actually refers to the public educational arrangements, no, the prevalence of or absence of crime and violence, no, and racial segregation, among others. So this would also impact the way people enjoy the resort. If you live in the, so let's take the case of kaning prevalence or absence of crime and violence. If you live in a community, no, where there is high crime, no matter how rich you are or no matter how big your income is, it's not really that para bang meaningful if you cannot do the things that you want to do because you are scared of your security, no. So that's or in the case, so we can probably relate this as well to the peace and order situations, no, like in Mindanao, no, we have been um, many times before, no, living in this island in which we most inhabitants experience the problems of war, no, and despite the fact that probably we have people who are affluent, no, who are affluent, who have the resources, this condition, no, somehow um do not provide a guarantee, no, despite the fact that they have money, that they will be able to fully enjoy, no, their money because of the conditions of war in Mindanao, no, before. Now, number letter D, no, differences in relational perspectives. No, this refers to the customs, no, the conventions that prevail in a community, um, that somehow affect also the way people will be able to enjoy their resources, no. So for example, a relatively poor person living in a rich community may not be able to achieve elementary functionings even if his income may be much higher than those living in poorer communities, no, at which level the latter can function more comfortably. So mura ba og if you compare countries, no, as I've said, there are rich countries and there are poor countries. So, but in rich countries, it doesn't mean that there are no poor people, no. So even if they live, these poor people in rich countries, even if they live in a wealthy society, the income, no, that they receive, may be the same as the income, of relatively, let's say, well-off individuals in poorer countries, no. But they will not be able to enjoy the same amount of, let's say, they will not be able to enjoy their income in the same way, no, as those who live in poorer countries, despite the fact that they have the same level of income. So, but so these are examples of differences in relational perspectives that would impact the way, individuals are able to enjoy, the resources. And last is distribution within the family. So distribution within the family refers to the ways or attitudes that affect the distribution of incomes earned in the family. And Sen would, point, out here the, let's say, gender bias practices, no, that mostly, let's say, benefit, let's say, male, children in a particular family. So in India, I think most, um, Indian societies are still very, patriarchal, very sexist. So, um, it's usually the male, the son, no, the son who is, given the opportunity, for instance, to go to school, no, pursue, college and higher studies, while, the woman, the girl child is being, is left, at home, no, or not, is not given the opportunity to go to school. So that is one example of, distribution within the family. So again, what are the five, parametric variations of individuals that affect the way individuals are able to enjoy the resources? Personal heterogeneities, environmental diversities, social climate variations, differences in relational perspectives, and distribution within the family. So according to Sen, these are different factors that the resources approach to development, or at least Roshan approach, to social justice, does not take into account. Okay, so I will stop here.